Congressman Richard Neal is the chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, where he's worked on measures to support health and financial security. Retirement savings have been a big focus of his, as well as Medicare benefits. Chairman Neal, great to see you. You heard I had Charlie Dent up there before, and he wants to talk taxes and trade, but I'm not going to go that direction yet. I would love to kind of, first, congratulations, but I think, secondly, part of the picture of kind of keeping our older citizens together is making sure our social contract is working right. You are in the most powerful seat in the country when it comes to the economic dimensions of tax policy, inclusion, how we do it. And I'd love to kind of hear what's on your strategic dashboard when it comes to our elder citizens and what they most want.
Well, I have been unswerving in my support of Social Security. The basic reminder is that you can outlive an annuity, but you can't outlive Social Security. But ever so mindful of the fact that Social Security, the average annual benefit is $16,000 a year. So that means that half the recipients of Social Security receive less than $16,000 a year, about maybe $315 a month. They're not getting rich on Social Security. So what I've tried very hard to do is use the tax system to enhance 401k plans, make them more generous. I encourage everybody to always take advantage of the match, but also to point out that as people are going to live longer and work longer, that we intend to raise the minimum distribution age in the next go around of what is known as Secure 2.0 to 75 years. So in the last round of the Secure Act, which was the most important advance in retirement savings in 15 years, what we were able to do was to raise that age to 72. We're going to make it more expansive. I'm very proud of the fact that in my committee, every Republican voted for my bill. And in the House of Representatives, on the floor of the House, every Democrat in the House voted for it. And the final vote was 417 to 13. Here's a pretty glaring statistic, as you noted, Steve. Half the people that get up and go to work every single day in America are not in a qualified retirement plan.
Right.
That's pretty staggering, pretty challenging for all of us. So I intend to use the next 2 years to further enhance retirement savings, making better use of automatic enrollment, and trying very hard to pass my auto IRA bill. Our Republicans have objected to that in the past on the basis of the mandate. Privately, they like it. Publicly, they're concerned about the mandate. I remind them that Social Security is mandated savings. And we all pull a wagon in our youth so that we might be allowed to sit in the wagon in our aged years. So I think retirement savings is going to be very, very important going forward. I think it's possible in a lame duck session or certainly very early next year to pass the next round of retirement savings benefits.
Representative Neal, you just said something I think very, very powerful. I hadn't heard before, both the bipartisan support for the way you secure this, but also looking at Social Security and what undergirds it. The president earlier this year kept talking a lot about suspending the payroll tax. And many Republicans were opposed to that, many Democrats, but it put it on the map. And I've been interested, and I don't know the answer to this, whether Americans don't understand that payroll tax is what you're talking about, which is mandated savings into these accounts. Do you think there's been substantial damage done in that rhetoric on the infrastructure that upholds Social Security?
Well, it's payroll taxes that support Social Security and Medicare. We need to acknowledge that. One of the most famous conversations that I think every parent has with a child is that first summer job they have when the child comes home and says, "Who's this guy FICA? And why are they taking my money?" And I would always say, well, it's better to go down the hallway and have that conversation with your grandmother, see what she thinks of your FICA taxes. It's a generational obligation that we have to each other. I can't think of two social initiatives in terms of economic security that have worked better than Social Security and Medicare. The greater efficiency is also highlighted by the fact how few people really administer those two initiatives. So in the year 1900, the average age in America of expiration was 46 years old. In the year 2000, we're headed toward 80. And what's really staggering is if you get to 65, you're likely to go to 84, 85. So my point is that as we're going to live longer, we need to live better as well. And those that choose to work longer, I think that they ought to have some ability to make adjustments in their 401k plans as well. So Social Security for me is the great work of genius. I think that and the Civil Rights Act of '64 are the two greatest legislative achievements in American history.
And one of the other things that's been on my mind during the COVID crisis, and of course, we've been looking at the COVID relief bills, is I don't think a lot of people understand how many older Americans are tied together in small businesses. The small business out there is a vital both lifeline to people with income. It's also the backbone of a lot of American employment. But a lot of older Americans are in those areas. And I'd be interested in your take on that and on the relative degree or health, what options you see on the table in terms of responding to these folks that are still in need. I mean, COVID's not going away. It's still with us.
Well, the concept of the multi-employer pension plan also, I think, is applicable here. I think that can be utilized. But at the same time, we do have a problem in the Midwest and even in the city of Boston with Teamsters Local Number 25 with their multi-employer pension plan simply because there were fewer employers contributing to them. It's not about malfeasance. It's not about corruption. It's just because of changes in the marketplace. So I'm ever so optimistic that eventually my auto IRA bill is going to pass. And in that result, it would address some of the issues you've just raised, particularly as it relates to those employers that have 10 or fewer employees. We make it easier, it's tax favored to set up a retirement plan. We do not require the match. And I think that a lot of private sector individuals would be very anxious to sell those plans. So I think that this whole notion of retirement savings, Congress is addressing it, albeit a bit slowly, but nonetheless, we're focused on it.
I'm so pleased to hear you say that. I mean, when I worked with Jeff Bingaman, Senator Bingaman in the 1990s,
right.
We were trying to set up a pension plan without that
That's
match
right.
that would start. But it was like pulling teeth back then. So congratulations on getting that forward. We are taking questions from the audience, and we have one from Aaron Tax. Aaron?
Hey, Steve. This is Aaron Tax, the Director of Advocacy at SAGE, the nation's largest and oldest organization dedicated to improving the lives of LGBT older people. My question for you is, what can the federal government do to help ensure that we're collecting data on how COVID-19 is impacting LGBT older people who even before the pandemic faced higher rates of social isolation and higher rates of health disparities than their heterosexual and cisgender counterparts?
Yeah, good
Thank
question.
you, Aaron.
I think that there are a few agencies in the world that are better at collecting statistical data than the federal government of the United States. I mean, some of the arcane data that the federal government's able to retrieve is really startling, and all for the good, incidentally. So I work with the Joint Committee on Taxation, and there's not a better, I think, entity on Capitol Hill for collecting that sort of information, because that's how a lot of decision-making is evolved as it is passed on to the Committee on Ways and Means and to the Finance Committee in the Senate. So that's a great question. I think that I'll make sure my staff is in touch with you or encourage you to be in touch with the staff, because I think that also would come under, in some measure, part of the Social Security Subcommittee's jurisdiction. And John Larson, as you know, is a very able advocate for you.
Well, Chairman Richard Neal, Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, I hope you'll come back, and I hope we can just do a program. I don't even care if anybody's watching. We'll just talk taxes and trade in deep detail. Because I can tell it excites you, and it excites me, too. So I hope you'll come back.
It really does, and I got to tell you, there's a very few of us that it excites. I mean, but in Washington, as you know, it's a cult.
Exactly. Well,
I always say
Congressman
there's
Neal,
those staff members, we say to them, are you going home tonight? What are you reading currently? They get excited about taking the tax code home with them at night.
well, that's right. Well, Congressman Neal, thanks. Great seeing you again, and
Great.
I look forward to
All the
talking to you
best.
some more. Thanks so much.